Welcome back, everybody. We're going to go ahead and resume our Monday morning briefing for September 20th. I'm going to start by thanking Diedrich Allen. He always goes above and beyond. For him to stick around in order to finalize and finish this meeting is very much appreciated. We just ended an executive session for the purpose of interviewing a county administrator. No action is going to be taken. The process will continue, and when things come about, everybody will be notified at the time. With that being said, there's a new item that has popped up, and it's a discussion for the ARPA funds. Frank, would you take over from there, please?
Sure. Excuse me. Thank you, commissioners. The Mason County Housing Authority has rental and rental subsidy arrearages up to $129,757,000. That's hindering their ability to pay their mortgages, pay their insurance, pay their auditors, and pay their service providers. Per the Department of Commerce, the county can use ARPA funding to grant the funds to the Housing Authority and assist, and this is specifically the language under the authority for ARPA, to assist nonprofits impacted by COVID because of the need to keep those services available in the community. So I'm asking the commission if it is okay to put forward a request for ARPA funding to the Mason County Housing Authority to cover the rental and subsidy rental arrearages for the Mason County Housing Authority.
You said to put it to the House Authority. You mean to for the request to come to the commission of the Mason County Commission, right?
Mason County Commission to grant funding under ARPA to the Mason County Housing Authority.
Commissioners who'd like to speak?
Well, I'd like,
Oh, go for it.
yeah, maybe like to hear a little bit more from you, Commissioner Owens, since you've been sitting on there for, I mean, how did this happen? How do we fix this going forward? What's the plan from the Housing Authority?
Well, a lot of this here from the arrears aspect of it, this was done because they've had that moratorium. People couldn't be moved out. People couldn't do anything. So they literally weren't paying because of the COVID. That's how it came into being. But with the new transition and how everything's going, that's not going to be an option any longer, and people will have to pay or be moved out. But at this point, this is just to cover arrears because of COVID related non-payments.
And if I may add to that, one of the transitions that is going to occur within the Housing Authority is a review of the management company that is currently handling these services and these functions and these responsibilities. And that management company will be, on the one hand, held accountable, and on the other hand, will ultimately be corrected or resolved, the issue there resolved.
So one of the other things, and it just came to me, but we have the Treasury Rent Assistance Program. Earlier today, we briefed the Eviction Rental Assistance Program through Commerce. Are these folks eligible to work through Crossroads to get their arrearages worked through that funding source? If it's simply just an arrearages they haven't been paying because of the moratorium, there are other avenues that we could use federal dollars for.
Can I answer that?
Please, go ahead.
So, to the extent that they have, but not all tenants, it's at the whim of the tenant to ask for assistance. So if the tenant doesn't want assistance from the feds, then there's no way to get them to ask for that assistance. This is actually assisting the Housing Authority in its covering of those rents that they can't get tenants to ask for additional assistance.
So Crossroads has worked with landlords though. So, I mean, I think as a landlord, I mean, it might be worth a call to Crossroads.
Oh, absolutely.
To take advantage of that. I mean, that's, there was $4 million in rental assistance, that they've been putting out $160,000 a week in rental assistance. So, I mean, is that a path that the housing authority can initiate? I don't know
Just my opinion, for some of it they can, and I know they have already started a process for some of it, but it's not going to cover the majority of it, even for what they're going to be able to get. They were talking, I think there's a possibility of, what was it, up to 40, I think is what was mentioned.
They have started a process, and they have, from what I understand, they have completed some applications, but there's hesitancy on a number of tenants in going through that process.
But I'm saying the landlords can initiate that as well.
We were told something different.
No, a landlord can't use the housing assistance, the tenant's housing assistance,
They have
to cover the landlord's payments.
So the housing authority is in arrears, not the tenants.
No, the tenants are, and as a result of that, the housing authority is in arrears.
So again, I don't understand why tenants would be hesitant to get assistance. I mean, has there been outreach done to them that we know why they're hesitant to get this assistance that's being, it's widely available, or what's the issue?
I myself, I don't know why. I do know that there has been outreach to them. And remember, I'm just an ex officio on the board. Some of that stuff I'm not exactly privy to, but I do know they did do an outreach to them. They were working through the process, but there's just a lot of them that they don't get involved in. I think that a lot of them are going to leave when they have to pay, is what's going to happen. That's just part of that process as well. I'm going to say something. I don't know whether I am at liberty to say this, but some of the things that, because of those arrearages, payments to HUD and stuff like that, is at a crucial point. And I think that's why this was brought to us today.
So I think that's a different couching of simply they're behind on rent. I think that would be a more transparent way to talk about this if there is an issue with HUD, so that we're all clear on what we're trying to solve.
So there is an issue with HUD, and it's in their mortgage payments, as well as their mortgage and their insurance payments, because they pay HUD for their insurance. And they are 3 months behind on mortgage payments to HUD. And HUD has given them 72 hours notice to come up to cover their their mortgage payment that's past due.
So was this brought to the attention of the persons that are managing the complexes? And is it more than one complex, or is it all?
So the mortgage that's in arrears is only on one complex.
And as for bringing it forward, I could bet they knew, but they did not disclose it to us. I don't remember hearing anything about any of that during any of the meetings. And therefore, another reason why the changes have to occur that are occurring. Frank, did you ever hear any of that at any of the meetings?
I had in the last week.
Yeah, but in the meetings in
the meetings, no.
The board was never made aware of this. Again, that's why the transition that's in the process of occurring is happening right now, but it just started, as you know, to change the whole structure.
So I definitely want to help, especially the tenants. I mean, we don't want to push them out the door. But it sounds to me like there's a lot more going on than simply not paying HUD.
Yeah, and there is, and that's where the process. But the monies that was brought up today was just to handle something that's within the ARPA, the arrears part. The other consequences, the other organization and the consequences that are going to come from all this has to go through the process, as you know, with that organization.
So I may get another question. So I have, much like Commissioner Trask, definitely want to help, and we've consistently stepped up to the
Yeah.
plate to help the housing authority. I mean, so this is, but I mean, we have a line item on our ARPA list of projects for review going back to August that has an arrearages on there for the housing authority. So at some point, somebody knew to put $124,000 worth of arrearages on that form for our review over a month ago. What is that the same as this? I mean, the numbers are very similar, but I mean, is that the same as this, or is this a new thing? Is this a different thing? What's the
So that 124,000 is basically the same arrearages. The urgency here is that the management company has not made the Housing Authority Board aware of the cash flow issue, in that the past due mortgage payments are 3 months behind. So there was a request discussed to bring forward a request for arrearages for the Housing Authority. But in the last week, what has become aware is that the mortgage to HUD is 3 months in arrears, and that they have given the Housing Authority a 72-hour notice to make payment.
I guess the main question is we have it on there, but it was not a priority up until this point. Right now, the ask is that it be made a priority because of the issues that were happening. It was already happening, but to make it a priority now, we didn't fund it earlier.
It's not 123,545. It's
29,757 as of the end of last month.
So it went up a little bit since it was put in.
So who would we be paying with this?
It
Who
would,
would specifically? So like, I mean, is this money would it go to the housing authority and then to HUD, or
Yes.
the housing authority to Cascade and then HUD? Can we pay HUD directly?
no, it's going to go to the Housing Authority directly and not to Cascade. And from that, it'll be paid out.
And so do we have an agreement already drafted like we've done for everybody else? Like we've had to go back and forth on?
No, not yet, but I can
And
draft
do we
one.
have to take action in this at a meeting? Do we need a special meeting because of this?
We can have, well,
I think that wasn't the original was to have it for the meeting itself, just to have the commission be on the same page with it. Then they go internally and find ways to borrow the money to make it happen until it gets funded by the county.
They can go internally to borrow the money.
Different buildings, different funds, different things that are happening there.
so
that, I mean,
I would.
this
You can't,
this would be a,
go ahead.
I would rather go ahead and have if we're doing this and it's that urgent, I would rather have a special meeting to approve the funds to go to them,
Okay.
to the housing authority. I don't know, Diane, what are your thoughts on that? But I don't feel comfortable having them. I mean, if they're borrowing money from,
No, and I'm sure the best case scenario is for the commission to do it. That's the best case scenario, but I think everybody's trying to work within the parameters that they have. If the commission wants to have a special meeting, I don't think anybody's going to be upset about that. I'll show, we know that.
So next Tuesday's too late. Is that what I'm hearing?
sooner the better, absolutely,
you said 72 hours, right, Frank?
correct.
Mm.
And they may be able to mitigate that 72 hours. That 72 hours was this morning. So we may be able to mitigate that and delay that, knowing that there is funding coming forward.
So if we tell them that it's coming next Tuesday, that it'll be approved next Tuesday, then we don't need a special, if HUD will say, yeah, sure. Right?
If HUD will say yes.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like without seeing seeing an agreement without seeing an actual bill for this. I mean, I'd like to see a little bit more. If there is a way to get HUD, you know, with a commitment from us that we're potentially bringing some funding to the table, I'd like to see some of those documents at least.
Well, I think it's just trying to be right out there. I think we shouldn't never, even though, you know, I want to help the organization, we know that, we should never extend money out without that paperwork anyway. That agreement somehow written up before we would agree to that. It just would seem inappropriate just to cut a check without the actual.
And if I may add to that, since this is to cover arrearages, and the housing authority will continue to push for tenants to utilize other federal sources of funding, that when and if they do avail themselves of that and receipt additional funding back in, then these payments can be paid back to the county.
Well, if we're helping people pay their rent,
But there's two ways to look at it.
yeah.
There's helping people to pay rent. And that's generally run through facilities like Crossroads, where there's 3 or 4 other entities out there that do that. Then the county has the ability through ARPA to use and assist nonprofits that have been impacted by COVID. And that would be the restriction, is that as a nonprofit, it's been impacted by COVID. It's not able to pay its mortgages, insurance, its auditors, and its service providers. That this would then be used to help the nonprofit keep its services available to the community.
Am I hearing you right? It can be done one or 2 days. We can give it to them as arrears, or it can be given just as a grant to the organization for the amount, just to keep going that way.
Correct.
Not one. It can be one or the other. It doesn't have to be high, but either way, we'd still need some type of documentation, though.
Of course.
Does the commission have a preference on even how to handle it between the two options? One is a lot easier, a lot less paperwork.
I don't know, I kind of like to see I'd like to see why it's urgent right now. I mean, an email and something saying, it's not that I don't trust you, Frank, because I do.
Oh, of course. Oh, no.
I'm just
Of course.
looking for something in writing, so that we can show others that this is a priority and these are the reasons why.
Absolutely. I can forward the emails from the HUD.
And although I like that, I still think it's important to actually have the documentation written up like we would with any other organization, like Commissioner Schutte had mentioned. We would need to make sure that everything is the same.
The question is, on that documentation, how would the commission like to
Arrears
craft that?
or funding.
In my humble opinion, if it's going to, if the bill is directed to the housing authority, then
Which it is.
that's where the money should go.
But give it to them as an organization or arrears because we can do it either way is what he's saying. We can just give it to them as an organization that lost funding and cover that funding like we would, North Mason Resources, Crossroad, or anybody of the other ones that have applied to us over the years. Or we can give it to them as in arrears like we do for water or cable.
For the arrearages, it would require that it be done to the tenants and would require documentation on a tenant by tenant basis that would much more easily be performed through an agency like Crossroads. And the alternative is that you grant the money to the housing authority.
Well, I'd like to know that we exhausted the tenant support for arrearages through Crossroads first. And if that's truly, if we can do this either way, then I want to be sure that we have, to the best of the housing authority's ability, gotten their tenants engaged with the other rental support programs that we have.
But you still have this situation that's before us right now. I don't know if it's appropriate or not, Frank. Is it appropriate to ask how much is in arrears right now? Not in arrears. How much for HUD? How much for insurance? How much for
Hold on 1 second.
a general number? And again, for, Kevin, just so you know, there's never been a discussion about any of this happening at any of the meetings, and I've never missed a meeting. It just has not come up through the organization that's handling all that. They have not informed them.
So the mortgage arrearage is 27,000 and change. And then there's an insurance component. I don't know exactly how much that is.
So the insurance is in addition to the 127,000.
No,
There's another way we can do this. If we're interested, and that is, it may not be often, but to split the baby. Do so much right now as a granting, that 50,000, for example, to cover the arrearage and stuff like, or to cover the payments to HUD and the like, and still have them work forward with trying to get the rest of the monies through the Crossroads or one of the other organizations. And if they can't, then come back to the commission for those funds. Because as he said, it can be done two ways. We can go over arrearages, or we can just go to compensate and help out the nonprofit.
So Frank, if you can get a hold of HUD.
that's what I was going to suggest. Let me get a hold of HUD and talk to their regional service provider and find out what we can do on that 72-hour notice and whether or not we can delay that. And then we could bring this back forward, if we can, bring this back forward at our briefing next Monday.
Now, and is it a 72-hour notice before they start the process, of which if they start the process of foreclosure, even if you pay up, there's a fine and fee you have to pay, or it's a 72 hours before they can actually go through and ask for delivering of the note in full? During foreclosures, that's a couple of ways that it happens that way. If they go through to a bank, goes through to foreclose on you, they can ask for you to pay up to that point, but they can also have a note that says note due on demand.
So this is not a foreclosure at this point. This is a demand to have payments brought to date.
Well, what would the 72 hours be?
A notice to have payments brought up to date.
So, and then the other, I mean, the great irony to this is, are they not then also having to comply with the eviction moratorium and the foreclosure moratorium? Until
I don't know.
No, I'm serious.
No, I know you are.
I know.
Because I mean, it's just like, okay, let's just maybe like turn the volume down here a little bit and get a little bit more facts. Because I mean, I don't think they could, without serious legal intervention. I mean, I would go file a suit on behalf of the tenants if they tried to evict them between now and the end of this month. So I think we need to simmer down and get some more information and be really sort of deliberate about this, because I think there's either we're going to do a large grant to the housing authority to take care of this issue, or we're going to do some version of getting the tenants rental support through the Treasury Rent Assistance Program, or some combination of those two. So I don't know. I feel like we have an opportunity to just step back for a second, get more information from HUD, and then, really be deliberate about how we go about solving this issue.
I will do that. I will give them a call. And then come back with a much more cohesive plan of action around how to handle the HUD's request from this morning.
And then in the interim, Frank, could you also forward to us the request that got the initial 123,000 on here? I'm sure they sent over some documentation with that. It wasn't, or was that just a verbal?
That was just a verbal, this is how much our in arrearages.
So in the interim, it'd be great to get the documentation for that.
Sure.
Okay, so at this moment, we're gonna hold off. If it turns out that it's needed within the next 72 hours truly though, should we be prepared to come together again or what?
I'll know that by tomorrow.
I would say let's wait until we hear back from HUD, because we have until what, Wednesday? 24
Yes.
hours before Wednesday.
Which would be tomorrow morning, or well, 24 hours. If we set it for 5, if we tell them at 5, we set it at 5. Okay, so that we're on agreement there. That's what we're doing. Anything further on that one? Go ahead.
So their email says Thursday, September 23rd, before 5 p.m.
Yeah.
So I'll get back. I'll get some details from HUD today and come back with actions for a discussion for tomorrow.
Okay, that's where we're at on that. Is there any commissioner discussion? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
We've motioned and second to adjourn. Hearing no objection, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.